How do you take an innovative product idea, create a physical prototype, and then commercialize it? Our guest is the executive director of a nonprofit organization on a mission to help startups navigate the journey from physical prototype to scale. And this organization loves connecting startups to the right designers, manufacturers, and suppliers through its extensive network. Now, you know how excited I get when we talk about manufacturing, inventory, and supply chain. Oh my gosh, I'm fanning myself. Woohoo! And stay tuned for the Startup Life Live show. Let's glow, everyone. And there goes my voice. Oh. Oh my gosh, hello and welcome to the Startup Life Live show. I'm so sorry about my voice today. All of a sudden, it just disappeared. And that's what the beauty of going live. So I am your host, Ande Lyons, and and I am going to just keep going for it here. 4 times founder and startup champion, 2 founders around the world. And after raising 4 businesses of my own, I know firsthand what you founders are crawling through every single day. One minute you're choking, right, on what's going on. The next minute you're elated by all the great moments that your wonderful, phenomenal startup is bringing to you. And so I am deeply grateful that you carved out time to tune in and up your founder game, because as you do better, here I've got tears going down my face from this, your business will do better. A big yoo-hoo to the live viewers who are tuning in today, and a hearty welcome to all the replay viewers and podcast listeners. You will love this conversation. And if you're tuning in from YouTube, you know what to do. Click on that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you are alerted whenever I go live. And then hop on over to the Startup Life Live meetup group, because when you join this meetup group, you get an alert every time I post a new show. And that way you get a deep dive into our guest and everything they're bringing to the plate. Okay, so a few Andelicious announcements before I get going. Things are a little draggy today. Okay, Andelicious announcements. We have Arlen's Academy. Every time, I'm talking about this because every week she adds more value through her incredible platform here. And then, of course, we also are chatting about this week. Something with the dashboard is having a hard time today. Laura and I were just talking about this and how we have to go with the flow with live shows, because sometimes things get a little wonky. So if anybody is in the comment section, please share, because I can always cut this out, but I'm kind of stuck right here right now on this slide. Well, isn't that interesting? This is a first for me. Very interesting. Hey, Laura, this is an exciting time. I am going to do a quick refresh. Yeah, live is so much fun. I know, Richard. Oh, I don't know why it is stuck on this slide. I saw this happen to somebody else. I'm just going to reload. I'm going to be right back with everybody in just a second, and we will. I know. Oh, hey, I'm back. Okay, good. Sometimes these technology things, add a little excitement to the day. So I'm just going to move right on from my Andelicious announcements and give all of you a big founder hug. And I don't want to waste another second and bringing in my guest, because who knows what could go wrong next. So I'm not even going to bring up the artwork just yet, okay? Because clearly today things are exciting on the platform. But this is why we go live, because this keeps us on our toes as hosts, but also it really is a wonderful analogy for startup life, right? There are things that are just you have to be fluid. You have to be resilient. You've got to just go with the flow. So let me tell you about our wonderful guest, Laura Teicher. She's the executive director of Forge, a nonprofit organization on a mission to help startups navigate the journey from physical prototype to scale. And they work closely with startups to understand their business needs and connect them to the right type of manufacturer or supplier for the job. And for over 15 years, Laura has been dedicated to making the world a better place, especially for startups. Prior to joining Forge, Laura served as executive director of the Boston chapter of the largest global nonprofit network dedicated to fostering entrepreneurship, Teicher. So let's get Laura into the room here. I'm going to add her to the stream, make sure that we're all good to glow. Here she is, Laura Teicher. Laura, how funny is it that you and I were just talking about live events, and you were saying how you just tell your people for all of your events, well, tell everybody you told me.
No matter how many times you run a live program, do an event, no matter how much experience you build up, you go in with the assumption something might go wrong. There may be surprises. And the goal is not to always get rid of every possible mistake. It's to be adaptable and flexible and go with the flow. And, well done, Andy, because you got hit from all sides just now. And we're talking about, we're serving entrepreneurs and we're fostering innovation. We have to learn from you all and be adaptable and flexible. So
absolutely. I'm going to the comments are popping up. Okay. Thank you, Richard. Yay. And Linda, so happy you're here. She's like, yay. And I am just going to try this. Brent, I'm almost afraid to, because I'm afraid we'll get stuck on this, but a quick happy birthday, Brent. Your birthday was yesterday. Oh, no, everything's working great. Yay. So congratulations. And, Brent is our wonderful neurodiverse fan, Laura, that always reminds us of how important diversity is for the visible and the invisible folks who are disabled out there. It's so important that we acknowledge and bring them on board in our organizations, because innovation is directly tied to disability, because, when you're disabled, you've got to figure stuff out in an innovative way. And this is what I was posting, folks. I was going to post when I was introducing Laura, is Forge. And we're going to talk about the grants that they have available. We're going to talk about their event coming up here on October 18th. We're going to go deep into everything, because Laura is amazing. Laura, where are you hanging out today?
I'm at home today at my house in Marshfield. Moved in recently, so you can see all the books that are going to be put on shelves when I put them up.
That's wonderful. Hey, Laura, while I have you here, you've got to connect with Winston Daly. He's a local founder here, and he has this incredible website. Winston, throw your website URL into the comment section so I can bring it up. But it's helping our educational institutions hire more diverse teachers and helping those diverse teachers get hired. It's a wonderful, wonderful organization that he has created. And then talk about manufacturing. This is no fall, everybody. Ibrahim, and he's got manufacturing nailed. He works for a company I've been mentoring from day one, as he has, called Invisaware. They're local here in Massachusetts. They had to figure out a lot about manufacturing and sourcing with their organization. And Winston, yay, it's a agogos.io. So those of you listening, agogos.io. And, it's just a phenomenal platform. He's doing remarkable things. And we love that he's local here in Boston with all he has to offer. So Laura and I are local in Boston. We get to connect locally, although we haven't done much of that given the pandemic. But I'm so happy that Laura's here, because she was also brought to me by one of our favorites. We call her the glue in the startup ecosystem, the one and only Bobby Carlton of Carlton PR. And she's remarkable. She's also the founder of Mass Innovation Nights for over a decade, right, Laura? She had a phenomenal event every month, highlighting all the incredible tech companies here and innovative companies in the area. And plus, for you folks who like to speak, she is all about getting rid of male, pale, and stale on the stage at conferences. So go check out her Innovation Women. I think that's the right thing, Bobby. And yeah, thank you, Laura. And join. It's really simple to join. It's really inexpensive. And she makes sure that you get in front of event planners around the country. All right. There we go. There's the Andelicious moment here. Laura, I just, we all have different lived experiences that bring us to where we are, or threads that we pull on that help us, figure out, what do we really want to do? Where do our passions lie? Correct. And so I'd love to know, how did your early lived experience prepare you for nurturing and educating startups? And specifically, were you surrounded by entrepreneurs growing up, or were there innovators in your home? Were you hustling product in elementary school yourself, or are you a natural problem solver? What was it that lit your heart up about this segment?
Thank you, Andy, for the great introduction. I just want to say happy birthday to Brent, and really appreciate this opportunity to chat with you, Andy. So I would not say I'm a natural born entrepreneur at all. So no, there can be varied and meandering paths to engaging with innovation, but I'm very passionate about problem solving. Nothing fires me up like problem solving and impact. And those two things ultimately brought me into the innovation ecosystem. But I can't say I came up with any groundbreaking business ideas when I was a child.
Well, when we were doing our tech and show check, you told me this wonderful story, which I think planted a seed. And that's when you were in college, right? And you noticed the apples. Talk to everybody about that.
Absolutely. And you'll see the tie-ins with Forge later on when we get into that. When I was in undergrad, localization of food wasn't so much in the conversation as it is today. And so I was at a university that had cafeteria halls and meal plans, and they contracted all the food through a very large corporation that provides food services to large organizations across the country. And I found out that although I went to school in Rochester, surrounded by farmland where they were growing corn and apples and all of these things, most of the produce in the cafeterias was being shipped multiple times across the world before it got to our cafeterias. It'd go from, a farm in Chile to a distribution center in a different part of the US, all the way over to our university. And this means there's a really big carbon footprint for each apple. And there's a missed opportunity when you could buy apples down the road. Right. So we started, a few of us who are students started talking with the corporation and they were not willing to deal with small local farmers. So we found a way to kind of bring them together to collectively bargain. And in my time, this resulted in a handful of produce items coming into the cafeterias locally. But I do think you're right. It planted a seed for me personally and hopefully for the bigger organizations involved.
Absolutely.
That I continued after I left.
You were in upstate New York, like the home of apples, for crying out loud, right? And so I know it was probably frustrating to see that, but what I love is how this tapped into your leadership skills, your problem solving skills. How do we get this done, right? How do we make this happen? You didn't just get turned away and said, oh, well, right? It went back to what you're doing. Like, no, I'm going to fix this. So, to me, that's like a real indication of how, you moved forward in life after getting your education. And in looking through your background, you spent a lot of time in the world, around education and community advocacy with nonprofits. So, some of us will go right to for-profit, some of us nonprofits, some weave in and out. Why were nonprofits and impact-driven companies important to you?
I would say my whole career has been about finding where I can have the most impact. And actually, I've worked in the public sector, the private sector, and the nonprofit sector. And I truly believe where I am now is the most impactful role I've had to date. But it's been a learning curve and a meandering for me finding where I can be most impactful.
That's right. And, and it takes a certain personality to go into nonprofits, because sometimes, the for-profit world, there's more of a hierarchy, perhaps, or there's a bottom line, do it or you're fired type of thing, right? And the expectations. But for nonprofit, you really have to use more, I think, more humanity and more leadership skills to help move folks along. That's just me as an observer, from volunteering. What are your thoughts about that?
I mean, I think the hope is to bring humanity and leadership no matter what organization you're at. A funny story is I went to business school 10 years ago. I just had my 10-year reunion. So longer ago than I tend to
Did you
think.
go locally?
I went to BU, yes.
Okay, great. Yeah.
And so props to my terriers out there. I took mostly impact related and cross-cultural related coursework. And I took accounting for profits and accounting for nonprofits. And the result was I said, I never want to work in nonprofits. It looks too hard because you are more resource constrained.
Right.
And you have to be both entrepreneurial and very strategic in your fundraising. You can't simply unlock a widget that you can project will sell another $1 million next year.
Right. Right.
You're
So-
doing more with less sometimes.
So that makes it even meatier and more delicious for someone like you, I think.
Absolutely. I think if it were easier, it would be less interesting and exciting for me.
Right.
personally.
So one of the things I noticed in doing my homework on you, because I just love finding out the background of my guests and what brought them here today. There's an incredible organization that I didn't even know about. Where have I been? Called Net Impact. And you have been involved with this extraordinary organization as its president, as a volunteer, and today you continue to devote time. Will you please share this organization with everyone? Because I think it's really an incredible, impactful group of folks.
It really is. So Net Impact is global. And I was president just of the Boston chapter. But it's a network for folks who want to use their careers predominantly in the business sector for positive impact. And what I think is so wonderful about it is it's bringing together a wide array of very young professionals, sort of straight out of school, and actually of school chapters as well, and giving them an opportunity to lead for the first time within these local chapters. And it's sort of a safe environment to connect with like-minded folks and grow your career. And I've really been just astounded by how far the careers of everyone I was there with have come in CSR and sustainability and all these really impactful fields. I think it was transformative for me. I can't recommend it highly enough for young folks.
Oh my gosh. So, and is it netimpact.org? I'm sorry I didn't grab the URL. I'll look that up, folks, but I'll put it and I'll have it in the show notes for you, because seriously, it's like the Toastmasters for careers for folks who want to really add value to the planet and are in an impact-driven organizations, but they want to get there and bring that themselves. And a lot of times you need to figure that out in a safe environment, especially a psychologically a safe environment. And Net Impact sounds like it provides that for everyone. And I'm so glad that you have been motivated to do that and inspired by it as well, because, we can't just all be into our one or two things in life. These side organizations, opportunities, whether it's a hobby or a volunteer assignment, is really part of feeding our souls. And it's so important. So I'm just going to say a quick hello to, hey, Ruth, and thank you for sharing. We're going to be talking about the Forge 25K and non-dilutive funding, product development grant application. Folks, all the links are going to be in the show notes. But I want to say hi to Ruth, who always helps us out from Nairobi. She's an incredible digital marketer. She's my community manager here for the Startup Life Live show, but she does a lot of other great work in the world. And Chastity Brown, so happy to see you and so happy that you're here tuning in and hearing the backstory behind Laura Teicher, because it's so important to find out what leads someone here. Now, you and I initially met when you were with Ty. So please share with everyone this another incredible organization that you participated in and led the Boston chapter of.
Absolutely. Actually, just to double down on that impact a little, that was my first president role, and it was as a volunteer when I was
Nice.
working in the for-profit sector. And it was the experience scaling a for-profit plus the volunteer experience with net impact in a leadership role that allowed me to get that first executive director job at Thai, which frankly I thought was a stretch when I applied for it. It's a really impressive network.
And what does T and its lowercase I, capital E stand for?
Yes, it stands for the Indus Entrepreneurs. So this is a group that was originally founded by folks who had immigrated from the Indus Valley regions around India to the US and just had this outstanding percentage of really high performing entrepreneurs that came here with literally just what was in their pocket and
Right.
created major companies and then built Thai to give back and foster the next generation of entrepreneurs. And so again, that experience with net impact combined with the MBA and the
Right.
experience in the private sector allowed me to apply for that. But one thing I'd love to plug, because I know this is a little bit of an inspirational and personal live stream, is that I was intrigued by the job description and I did not 100%, in my opinion, qualify for it. And there's this tough thing where women tend, statistically, it's been shown in studies, to apply if we feel we are 100% or almost 100% qualified, whereas other folks might apply if they're only 70% qualified. So this is my big plug. If you see that stretch role and you're excited about it, throw out your application, try. You never know what will happen. I got that job and it led me to this job, and this is my dream job.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for that. Okay, everybody, you know what I'm going to say right here. That is definitely an Andelicious moment. Especially for you wonderful women out there, you know what Laura's talking about. You can easily look and find yourself lacking and, take the advice. And some men might feel that way too, but a lot of men will be like, I'm going to go for it. And of course, all the other guys are like, yeah, and click on the beer mugs. But women, you don't know. Let the company make the decision. And decide if you're qualified or not. Don't you come up with considerations, right? For that. That is so, so wonderful. Nofal has a great comment on impact. Net impact, he says, that's a great initiative. Love it. I have a teen myself. We'll be sharing that. Hooray. And oh my gosh, you're kidding, Nofal. He says he was a 2013 Thai Challenge winner with his first startup. I forgot about that, Nofal. Thank you for sharing that. That's so wonderful. And how many years were you with Ty? And I say this, folks, because Laura's done a beautiful job helping us on this lovely unfolding story of all the different things that we pull on and steps that we take on the lily pads that lead us to something we might not have been able to plan ahead of time, or like people like to say, manifest or intention. What we were doing was preparing ourselves along the way, right, Laura?
Yes. So I was with Thai for 3 years, and it was really an incredible learning experience as my first executive director. We have so many impactful programs. And I went from that role to this role about 4 years ago.
Excellent. And how did you learn about Forge yourself?
So another good story. I've been a super fan of Greentown Labs for many, many, many years. Greentown Labs is the largest climate tech incubator in all of North America. So they have about 200 clean tech startup companies that are members at any time. I'd been watching Greentown, and I did apply for a job there, which I was quickly disqualified for. So sometimes you throw the spaghetti on the wall, it doesn't work out. The day I found out I had been disqualified for good reasons, they were looking for someone with experience running a lab space, which I did not have. The day I found that out, I was already scheduled to go to a networking event at Greentown. And I was really sad and disappointed I didn't get that job. But I forced myself to rally and go. I saw the CEO of Greentown Labs there, and after I worked up the courage, I walked up to her and I said, "You may not remember me. We were actually on the stage together once because of Net Impact. I'm a super fan. I just applied. It's not a fit. If there's ever a fit, I would love to come on board." And she said, "Actually, we have a sister nonprofit organization." At the time, it was called Greentown Learn. We could talk about that more later. That's looking for an executive director. And based on what you're telling me about your background, I think you should apply. The rest is history. But if I
Yay.
hadn't sort of sucked it up and gone to that event and walked up to her, I wouldn't be where I am today.
Oh my gosh, everybody. Another great example of suiting up and showing up, as we used to say back in the day. And also the answer is always no unless you ask. Right. So you have to ask. And what you did is you planted a seed, and she could have gone, But no, she was like, oh my gosh, because she probably remembered seeing your bio come across whatever or not. But, she knew that she had to get this sister organization an executive director. And given what you had built already and your roles that you'd had, she was absolutely connecting the dots just then. So bravo to you. That's such a great example, Laura. So you joined Forge. How big was the organization when you joined?
At the time, there were 3 of us on the team, quite small. I did not know the organization existed before I spoke to Emily, the CEO of Greentown Labs. It was very quietly impactful at the time. And as I learned more about it, I got more and more excited about the potential for impact.
Yeah. Yeah. So talk about, you shared why you joined Forge, but, why was this organization formed? What was its mission and vision? And folks, this is the most important part for your own for-profit startup, but especially important for nonprofits to really nail down what that mission statement is, what that vision statement is, because it's really makes it much easier to tap into folks who want to help and want to serve. What is Forge's mission and vision, Laura?
Great questions. And really what I spent the first handful of months here focusing on, because it was a little bit unclear of all the directions we could go, what direction we wanted to go in. But the inception of our core programming came about because, again, this Greentown, which is our sister organization, it's not my organization, but it's an organization near and dear to my heart that sort of birthed what is now Forge. So when you're trying to solve a real world problem like climate change, or, if you look at healthcare, any of the other really pressing problems today, usually you're solving a problem that is physically manifesting in the world. So climate change, you're talking about increasing temperatures, rising seas, challenged crops. You can't solve those problems without a physical product or component that's interacting with these challenges.
That's right.
So Emily came to realize that a majority of the startups she was serving had manufacturing needs. And she was speaking to a number of manufacturers one day and said, actually, would you guys like to talk to each other? And that's sort of the genesis of the program, is recognizing there's a wealth of innovation and physical innovation in the region, in these Greentown locations. There's a wealth of manufacturing expertise right in our backyards. How can we connect the dots, help them work together, help bring these impactful products to market and scale faster and more impactfully?
See, and this is so wonderful. And folks, you may remember a few episodes when we had the woman who developed Wad Free for the dryer for your sheets. She used a local manufacturer, and we are pretty much indoctrinated to think China or someplace offshore for manufacturing. Like, it's too expensive to do locally. Let's talk a little bit about that, because for so many, it's great to have your partner, your manufacturer, your suppliers locally, because then you build, or regionally, because now you're building relationships with them. You feel like they're part of your team versus this unknown entity that you never see. Talk about that for a second. How, and I love how it ties into when you were in college too, because, go local, but share why local is so important and how we can change the way we think about it going forward with anything any prototypes we have.
Very happy to talk about this. You could probably see me vibrating in my seat, getting ready to speak on the subject. There are a lot of assumptions that are made that have to be made when you're starting a new company, right? You can't possibly do a deep dive and be an expert in all of the things around your product and around your company. And one of the default assumptions we find is, I have to go overseas to make this. When startups and companies engage with Forge, we want whatever is best for you. So if you go overseas, that's fine. But we like to kind of open the door to have you consider doing this locally. If our listeners are in Massachusetts, which is where Forge currently has 3 offices in our main footprint, there are over 7,000 manufacturers right here in Massachusetts, and not everyone knows that. So we do a lot of helping startups think through how they source their supply chain and sort of debunking some wrong assumptions. So some of the advantages to doing it locally, at the prototyping stage, it's incredibly powerful when you're iterating to just be able to drive over, see it come off the line, communicate directly. But there can be a lot of unaccounted for costs too with going overseas, especially in the face of supply chain disruptions that we've been seeing globally over the last couple of years.
Sure.
So when you do it locally, you can reduce shipping times and lags, shipping fees, overseas management costs, kind of asynchronous communication, the cost of flying there, because you probably will to look at it come off the line at some point, hidden tariffs. There's a lot. So
Oh yeah, and sometimes they can get stuck on the boat in the
in the Suez
harbor,
Canal, absolutely.
and you can't get it
So
off.
we find, especially at the earlier phases and the shorter runs, it's especially effective to source locally. We've worked with over 540 startups to date. 75% of them keep coming back to Forge once they've engaged. And anecdotally, one of the most common things we hear is, first off, you saved us from making a lot of expensive mistakes as we are scaling our manufacturing.
Right.
Second off, I didn't know I could make this here, and I'm so glad I did. And can you give me more local referrals?
Exactly. And as someone who had a food manufacturing business, it was wonderful to have the manufacturer within a car ride. And you'll be able to chat with them and how can we improve this and how can we scale, and having them work with me, taking it to the next level. And it's the same thing with all products, folks. It's so great to have sort of a hands-on experience, because we had a gentleman who had a shoe company. Well, we've had several who've had shoe companies, but he had to go live there for a year and help figure it out. His family sent him off with their last dime to figure it out, and he did. But those are some challenges, and instead to be able to do it here. And as a marketing person myself, I understand that, you want to stay competitive, but folks, you can market, create that emotional brand promise with folks based on the experience your product is going to give them, not the price. You can differentiate so that they are willing to, that they're price insensitive, right? Laura, I mean, I'm not saying that manufacturing local is going to automatically make things more expensive, but sometimes there's some misperceptions around that.
Well, again, that's where sometimes people aren't accounting for a lot of the hidden costs of going overseas. So a lot of that becomes a surprise later on when you get bills with added tariffs and shipping fees and delays. So it's a little bit of an externality almost that people don't account for. But I've lost my train of thought.
Oh, that's okay, because I want to move on to this right here, which is your product development grant. And this is really important, folks. It's clean tech historically marginalized led startups. So product development grants to break through the barrier and succeed in clean tech. And you can win up to $25,000 to compete and scale. I have all the links in the show notes. We have the English version. We have the Spanish version here. You can scan that thumbnail right there. Or again, I have the links in the show notes. But this is incredible. And I know that you help startups in such a significant way at Forge. And folks, it's Forge, FORGEMASS.org. And you can see it going by in the banner here, but for those who are listening, you've got to get to the website and check it out, especially if you're a startup, because they really make things easy for you. Talk about the process of how you bring folks on board who, have that prototype or even have that idea and they don't know where to begin with a designer or what to have, and how much do you charge them for this, and what kind of resources do you provide?
Thank you. Very importantly, we haven't charged a startup to date for anything we do. We provide a wide array of services.
Hold on, everybody clap. Come on. Seriously?
And we think that's really important, especially when we talk about reaching diverse audiences, being
Sure.
accessible, maximizing our impact. We don't want barriers to access for innovators. Now, we are most effective and really oriented towards startups that have at least an early prototype. It can be works like, it can be looks like, it does not have to be fancy. We've worked with people who have duct taped toilet paper roll together to give us a physical prototype, or screwed pieces of wood. But we need to be in the phase where we're starting to think about the physical product and not just the idea stage. Now, that being said, we have a philosophy of no startup left behind. So if you reach out to us, we're going to try to direct you elsewhere if you're not quite ready for Forge's services. And we might follow up with you in a year or two to see if we can help you then. So we're not turning anyone away, but we're most effective when there's at least a prototype. Engagement with Forge starts with a live one-to-one or one-to-two session for each startup. And I have to give major props to my team because we're now serving over 300 startups a year. And we're meeting with them all individually.
And how big is your team now, Laura?
We're at 8, and we'll be
Doubled in
at
size.
12 early next year. We're growing pretty quickly, and we're also getting more efficient. And what's really important to note is, when I came in, we were serving about 40, 50 startups a year. We've scaled about 6x to over 300 startups a year, which is really important when you're scaling that fast to pay attention to your outcomes. So we're not seeing a decrease in increases in manufacturing readiness level for our startups, in outcomes like local contracts, in positive feedback from those startups. We want to make sure as we're scaling that quality of service is increasing, not lessening. And if we ever see it go differently, then we'll have to, create more thresholds or grow faster. So we're working with a lot of startups. The team meets with each one individually, in conjunction with onboarding, so we can really assess your product development needs, your manufacturing needs. We find a lot of times innovators come to us with one idea of their readiness level, and we're able to help identify some blind spots and bring in extra resources. Very importantly, when you're innovating physical products, it is very capital intensive upfront.
Yes.
Much of the innovation ecosystem is actually oriented towards software. It's very robust, but there's this emphasis on failing fast, iterating over and over again, getting early funding from venture capitalists. This is not a one-to-one conversion when it comes to physical products. And having a group like Forge that's not going to charge you, that you can trust, that can advise you on all of the challenges and complexities that go into scaling manufacturing is a really effective way to prevent expensive mistakes in product development that can make or break these innovative companies. And then to go one step further, as we're flashing up the product development grant on the screen, we also do offer non-dilutive, so we don't take equity, we don't charge for it. When I'm fundraising for Forge, I'm also fundraising for the Forge Product Development Grant Program. And so this is a way that startups can secure small targeted amounts of funding at critical stages in product development to help them get through that valley of death where perhaps they've raised friends and family, they have a beta prototype, they need a gamma prototype in order to get that next level of funding. So we're addressing these gaps, we're preventing costly mistakes. And then we have a lot of workshops and educational programming. We take startups on factory tours so they can really see how it's made. We have workbooks. So really the first step, check out the website, www.forgemass.org, sign up for a product development session so we can assess where you're at. And then we'll tap you into our ecosystem partners, our expert supplier network, our educational programming, our grant programming, our manufacturing whatever we can do that's valuable to you around your manufacturing and supply chain.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Folks, I'm having what we call here in the Startup Life Live show a stitch that on a pillow moment. And Richard O is absolutely right when he says, stitch that on a pillow, no startup left behind. What don't you offer is a smaller list. Seriously, you do some serious hand holding. And some folks have some incredible ideas that will change the course of climate and helping the planet, but also the course of their generational wealth, their family, the future of their family through this. And by holding their hand and helping them through the design process when they come in with their glued and duct taped and rubber band pulled together, a couple of nails, prototype, you can say, okay, now I see what you're doing. And because you've actually got a handheld here. And now we're going to get you through this process of how you can go from prototype to probably 3D printing first of your prototype, and then getting it into a mold that will then create the scalable manufacturing inventory based product. Oh my gosh, I love that so much.
You just made a really important point, which is, for folks who haven't gone through the manufacturing process before, the processes you use are different at different scales. And so sometimes when I share that 75% return rate that we're so proud of from our innovators, because we think it does prove they're finding value in our services, sometimes I get asked, well, does that mean that you weren't helpful the first time? Occasionally, but more likely it means we were helpful and now they've reached another scale, or they've realized they have to make this piece out of metal versus plastic, or they need a contract mechanical engineer, or they need help with supply chain logistics and packaging. They're on to the next need, and that often is graduating across processes as you hit new scales.
Yeah. So, and you talk about, regional. Are these for startups that are in the New England region? Where geographically do you serve?
That's a great question. And I'd like to emphasize that on the innovation and startup side, we are geographically agnostic and we're sector agnostic. So we've talked a lot about climate tech. It is our origin story. About 40% of our startup portfolio today is clean tech in some way. But if it needs to be made, we can help. So this includes medical device, robotics, advanced materials, consumer products, food and beverage, anything physical. We're going to do our best to help you. And while we do have some geographic boundaries in terms of our manufacturing and supply chain network, because we need staff to serve all of this,
Sure.
we now have startups finding us from across the country and even across the world. So we're really offering something very unique that they're looking for.
I love the tagline. If it needs to be made, we can help. But that's true. And especially after the last 4 years with you at the helm, Laura, because I'm sure you've put into some wonderful systems and procedures that make the process flow. And then again, you keep reiterating as one does to improve processes, but still, how you are helping folks. And especially when you have that idea and you've got some rigged device pulled together, you really do need that next step to really even understand the costs. Because when you're talking about supply chain, what it may have cost 2 months ago could be a completely different cost today. So you have to understand the cost of goods sold, everyone. So that means all those little parts and pieces and even the waste and the labor for assembly have to be massaged and noodled and figured out and broken down. And that's part of how you serve your startup founders, correct?
Absolutely. I'd say a very common scenario at Forge is an innovator comes to us with a first of its kind, incredible problem solving solution no one's invented before. We're talking about pulling energy out of the humidity in the air. We're talking about the early systems for COVID detection in communities that are now deployed across the country that we helped ruggedize and make corrosion proof. We're talking about prosthetic limbs for amputees that are more affordable and first of its kind solutions for folks who are deaf and blind simultaneously. Really impactful stuff.
Oh my gosh, like you must like some of these ideas do that when they first come across, you have to keep an open mind, right? Because sometimes you're like, say what?
Sometimes you say, is that really possible? And generally, they really do have a beautiful prototype that works. And often it is very bespoke. And they may have hand put together every piece. And they may think they're ready to go to a manufacturer to make 100 of them. But when we look at it, we may say, well, have you defined your specs? Is there a reason you're making this part out of diamonds? Because yes, they're very hard, but they're also very expensive. Is there a reason why you're making this component personally when you could buy it off the shelf? You need to kind of simplify all of the components, get unnecessary costs down, be really clear on why you're doing it. You have to think about design for manufacturing, design for assembly, design for user experience. It's really good to think about things like safety certifications early on, depending on the application, because otherwise you can have a costly redesign later on. There really is so much that go into it. So even though we're working with very technically savvy founders, they may not have worked with manufacturers and scaling before. And there
That's
can be a
right.
lot of blind spots that we can help with.
And supply. I mean, folks, did we ever really talk about supply as consumers before until COVID? And all of a sudden, what do you mean that washers? How much now? I have to replace my refrigerator. Say what? It's going to take how many months? You know, little things too that you might need to have replaced. All of a sudden, you couldn't find like toilet paper. Uh,
Lumber for a while was quite
yes.
expensive when
Oh my
people were
gosh,
just looking
cat
at
food,
commodity.
dog food, things like that. It was really hard. So I think everybody has a deeper appreciation on the supply chain side. And I love that you have partners that you can have folks chat with. So, do you have mentors involved at Forge as well? People who volunteer their time, engineers, those important people like No Fall, who was in the thread for a while there, who really, have the experience and design elements as well,
Well, we know it takes a village, right?
right?
So we do have folks within the Forge team with backgrounds in engineering and manufacturing, but we really have this incredible network around us. So we have over 500 innovation-friendly manufacturers and suppliers. That's innovation-friendly part is really important.
Talk about that.
Not all manufacturers want to work with startups. There's often an assumption that they haven't thought through all of these other pieces around design for manufacturing, specs, bill of materials, having money to spend with the manufacturers. So
Mhm.
we kind of serve as a de-risking middleman for both sides. If a startup starts cold calling local manufacturers, they may or may not get a reply. If the introduction's coming from Forge, our network knows that we've made sure you're ready and right fit, and they're really eager not only to be contracted by you, but even to give free time, free expertise, free components in some cases
Right.
to Forge startups. We also have, of course, a fantastic board of directors. We have regional advisory councils around each location to help us tap into the local community, the local needs. We have our partners and sponsors who often offer their expertise and get involved. We have a volunteer manufacturing expert in residence. We're about to start growing that program for particularly tricky cases. We have ecosystem collaborators, so we work symbiotically with most of the incubators, universities, accelerators in the area. We do
Oh my,
collaborative content. So, when you hear that we have an 8-person team and you wonder, how do we do this all? This is how we do this all. We have
that's
incredibly knowledgeable and engaged network around us.
and you've done a phenomenal job building the brand of the organization so that you can build these and engage with these types of manufacturers and suppliers and leverage other support systems, both regionally and, the brain share of folks who understand how to bring innovation to life. Oh, I sound like a GE commercial. Uh, and how are you funding this? I mean, folks, can you imagine being Laura? I mean, you talk about having so many tiaras that she has to wear during the day. It's crazy. And I know you've got a great team, but you still have to have the overarching of all the different parts and pieces of this extraordinary organization. And so, what does fundraising look like for you
Well, I'm happy to say it's not just me anymore.
and the team?
We're growing. We're a startup ourselves. Most of our funding comes from grants, so government, quasi, private foundations, and sponsorships. So it is essentially all goodwill and mission connectivity. And at this point in time, we don't have any earned income streams. That's certainly something we're exploring introducing in the future. You always need to diversify revenue. So we are doing that and growing that. But it is mostly about positioning ourselves with people who have money to spend on impact and believe in our mission.
Absolutely. And those grants are out there, folks. Just like Forge has a grant for those of you who are creating and developing product that will serve the clean tech industry, and in marginally led startups as well. What does historically marginalized led startups mean?
It is a mouthful, and I promise you it's very intentional. The team takes inclusion really seriously and did a lot of research and discovery before launching this specific tranche of product development funding. So let me start with the clean tech part. Not all of our product development funding is for clean tech startups, just like not all our programming is, because I'm fundraising for this mechanism from different buckets. This is from a clean tech aligned supporter.
We understand that.
And then on the historically marginalized side, we're talking about, it's not the kind of more broad minority bucket you hear people talk about sometimes. It's really the communities that are being left behind and left out of funding opportunities. And this one is racially and ethnically focused. So it's Black-led startups, Hispanic and Latinx-led startups, Indigenous-led startups, and Arabic-led startup. It's a very specific slice.
Excellent.
And it's based on historically who has the hardest time unlocking this funding.
Right. And folks, there's so much social justice around clean tech. It's ridiculous. You know that a lot of big polluters are out there and they've put them into marginalized neighborhoods. Okay. And these folks have been taking on the brunt of the fossil fuel industry's pollution in our country. There's that new documentary out about Africa Town, you know, that little island pocket, if you're surrounded by major pollutants. So I just love this. I'm going to promote this heavily because it's so important that our people of color, our Indigenous folks, and get the leg up and the lift, because we throw out family and friends around all the time in the startup world, but really, is there, I mean, how many founders have, quote, family and friends with cash? You know, that's why it's so important that an organization like yours is here to help hold folks' hands and get them through this really important part, because great ideas happen. And these innovative ideas come often because someone is stressed out in a situation. They're up against a really big problem and they're like, gosh darn it, I'm going to solve this. But they don't know how, but they do know how to ask. And then there's this great organization, Forge, there to help them do it. So let's talk about this event you've got coming up here on the 18th of October right around the corner from me at the Innovation Hub at University of Massachusetts Lowell, a phenomenal school, by the way, here in Massachusetts. We love our UMass Lowell campus. They do so much around innovation. It says here, celebration of manufacturing. You are invited to a celebration of manufacturing in the Northeast Massachusetts region. No fall, we ought to go. Go ahead and talk about this, Laura.
Oh, very excited about this event. First off, I didn't know you were based at the iHub, so you should come on by and we should hang out there sometime. That is where one of our Forge offices is. So we have this Merrimack Valley office based in Lowell, serve kind of Northeast Massachusetts. We have our Pioneer Valley office in Western Mass, and we have our headquarters in Somerville, co-located with our sister organization, Greentown Labs. This is the first in a series of regional manufacturing celebrations we're planning. And I think probably a lot of our viewers don't know, October is manufacturing month across the country. So there are celebrations like this happening across the country throughout the month. If you have a physical product and you're thinking about manufacturing, I'd recommend going to loads of them and starting your supply chain. But of course, you can just reach out to Forge. We'll help you with that. So this event coming up on October 18th at the iHub is really meant to celebrate the wealth of manufacturing expertise and impact we have happening in the region. It is targeted. It's not a fully public event, which makes it challenging to promote because I know not all of you will be able to join us, but it's really meant to bring together and highlight and celebrate manufacturing CEOs, owners, and operators in the region. We'll be giving them some awards, especially to our friends who've gone above and beyond to help our innovators, and just really celebrating just this wealth of value creation that we have in the region.
Well, and folks, Lowell is located on the Merrimack River, and this is my region right outside of Boston that I live in. And this is really, in the Industrial Revolution, this was the hub of manufacturing. There is one amazing mill after another on that river. And so I love that historically, we had mills, shoes, furniture, you name it, was being manufactured here. And to have this wonderful return of manufacturing and supporting manufacturing at Lowell and the University of Massachusetts, Lowell, always talking about innovation. So many incredible companies have come through the iHub, which is a fun building, fun floor, this wonderful location in Lowell. You're surrounded by history. It's just terrific. And very excited. So, okay, yeah, I've got this. We've got to learn more. I'm going to put it into the comment section, everybody, and also into the show notes. But here it goes out here, and then I can bring it up on the screen. Please reach out to Barbara
Feiner at barbara@forgemass.org. Thank you for popping that into the chat. So if you're interested, but you're not quite sure if it's the right fit, just email Barbara, and bonus, if it's not a right fit, she'll still funnel you to other things we have going on at Forge that might be. So we talked about the product development sessions, which are those one-to-one intake sessions. We've talked about product development funding and the current open tranche. There'll be other tranches in the future. So if that one isn't a fit for you, stay tuned. We always announce these in our monthly e-newsletter. So you can sign up for that on our website, www.forgemass.org. We also run a manufacturing readiness workshop series. We have our last one of the year coming up. I don't recall if we gave you that thumbnail, Ande.
Nope, we don't have that thumbnail, but that's okay. We know how to find everything we need, and we know how to find you, and we know how to find Barbara, and all the links will be in the show notes. But manufacturing readiness workshop, come on.
Yes. So these are
So
repeatable Forge owned, branded, created workshops that target the most common gaps in manufacturing readiness that we've seen across over 540 startups since 2015. So they're really targeted to address core gaps. They come with a lot of optional workbooks too, so you can actually access those on the website without even attending the sessions. And the final one of the series is happening in November. I'll find the details at some point while you're chatting and throw it in the chat. It's focused on actually the fundraising up to A rounds that goes into making physical products.
My gosh, you were right. If it needs to be made, we can help on every single level. That's my new favorite tagline for Forge, in my own head at least. Can you share like one or two really fun examples of companies who have gone through the system? I mean, you mentioned a few earlier, but you can mention just a few more before we wrap up. I'd love to just hear like something interesting that came in. You went, what? And then boom, it took off.
There have been so many. You have your mind stretched on a regular basis when you're dealing with all these incredible scientists and innovators. I usually like to tell one of the most recent stories because it'll be freshest. And I think this is the first time I've told this story publicly, although we did highlight this company publicly at our big annual event, which happened a few weeks ago. So every year we have an annual supplier and innovation showcase. We've rolled it into the statewide manufacturing mashup. This just happened. We gave away Forge product development funding at a live pitch event. And there were 3 fabulous finalists that pitched that all deserve recognition, but the winner was Tatum Robotics. And it's run by a young woman with a focus on unlocking communication for folks with deaf blindness. And I learned a lot from this young woman because she explained to me, when you're both deaf and blind, you communicate by signing. and you listen by holding someone else's hand while they sign. And what this means is that it's really hard to do things we take for granted, like listen to a podcast, watch the news, read a newspaper, without someone there to translate for you. You can imagine this has been exacerbated during the pandemic, when everyone's been isolated. Only being able to communicate that way, if you don't have a friend or a family member with you constantly, I can't imagine how challenging it would be. So they developed a robotic solution. It's a robotic hand, but it is hand-like enough that they've done a tremendous amount of testing with, local schools focused on deaf and blindness, and they have a prototype that works for deaf and blind users. They can actually understand it. So it's a software robotics combination. They have the software to translate language into the robotic hand signing that a person can hold. And suddenly now I could communicate with them when I couldn't currently, because I don't know sign language. It's
Right.
just incredible.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. First of all, my heart goes out to, anyone who was both deaf and blind during the pandemic and didn't have anyone. I mean, that's severe isolation. And, to have that robotic hand to, so they can tap in and open up their world to even more. What a beautiful, I mean, oh my gosh. And this must be like what you hear and see on a daily basis at Forge, right?
It really can be quite mind-blowing. It wouldn't
Yeah.
have even I have had no exposure to this community, so I wasn't even aware of how challenging and isolating that must be. And then to have someone say, "I have the first of a kind solution, and we've tested it, and it works, and we just need some money to get to the next iteration of our prototype," sign Forge up.
Yes, sign Forge up, exactly. I have to tell you this, thank you for opening my eyes and heart and mind and our listeners and the audience's minds to how you are serving folks who have prototypes, handheld, actual products that are necessary and needed, or they might be frivolous and fun, folks. Everything doesn't always have to have an impact to have an impact, right? A good positive impact. But it has to just be such a joy-filled, purpose-filled day for you all the time, right?
Absolutely. And I want to double down on what you just said. You don't have to be solving something so deeply challenging for us to work with you. We've worked with folks on making frisbees and packaging cookies, and that's impactful too, because you know what, we've supported over 5,000 jobs in innovation and manufacturing. We're helping companies grow locally. We're helping to decarbonize supply chains by localizing them. So
Right.
to me, it's impactful whether we're helping with a frisbee or a robotic hand. You can tell certain things get me truly fired up, but it's all exciting.
It is because, when there's so many parts and pieces to this. Yes, someone might be actually doing something so impactful. It's, brings tears to your eyes. But at the same time, someone is developing a product that they're going to sell and, feed their family, educate their kids, do more, bring on board community. Maybe they scale globally and now they've got a chance to help the world economically as well with their products. So, I love everything that you're doing. I feel the reward that you get every day as you show up to solve the problems, to keep this great organization moving forward. And everyone who listens to the show knows how much this host loves anything to do with manufacturing, inventory, cost of goods sold, supply chain. I just think that to me are, those are, the really meaty products that we love to solve and manage, and they come with such unique characteristics for managing all those parts and pieces. So Forge is helping folks do that. That's all caps Forge if you're Googling it, or forgemass.org. Any last thoughts before I pop you into the green room? We covered so much and you were so generous sharing so much information with us today.
Oh, thank you. Well, you and your listeners have been really generous in giving me this platform to share Forge with everyone, and love all the interactive chat that's happening. I would just say that, you asked earlier if I was naturally entrepreneurial, and I said no. And sometimes I get asked, are you going to start your own company one day? And I say, probably not, because I can't imagine what one company I could start that would be more impactful than the 300 companies a year we're serving, I feel that it is my duty to grow this organization and make sure we're serving any and all innovators we can, and we're connecting any and all domestic manufacturing we can. So we do have some exciting announcements coming up. We'll be announcing some growth soon. We will be hiring for 4 or 5 positions. Those will go live soon. So if you're interested in joining Forge or sending talent my way, we're especially looking for folks with manufacturing backgrounds. Check out our website. I think we've mentioned the URL.
And it's all right across the bottom right there.
The whole also time. Sign up for our monthly newsletter. So come engage with us. Let us help you with your supply chain, with your manufacturing. Come work with us. Hope that we get a lot of engagement from this community. And thank you again for this opportunity.
Oh, Laura, my sincere pleasure. And I'm with No Fall. He says, this was wonderful. Thank you so much, Laura. Such great impact and experiences. Our pleasure, No Fall. And I'm going to pop you in the green room. Thank you so much for sharing this organization's incredible mission and vision and how they're serving the world. Hey, thank you, Adam, right? Wonderful.
Oh, that's one of my new teammates right there. Self-watching.
Yeah, if you're listening, he's got the strong arm emoji up there and a clap. It's so important. And Richard O, absolutely. Wow. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. With a lot of the hand clapping too. It's just amazing how an organization like this can give such an incredible lift. And I am so grateful to you and your board and everyone, the sponsors, the grant providers, everybody who's making it happen, because it does take a village, but this is really important wind being added to sails that really need it, because it's capital intensive. And, you got to get some non-dilutive capital in when you are manufacturing, folks. So Laura, thank you so much for sharing. Can't wait to see you and hug in real life. And I'm going to pop you into the green room and wrap the show up. I always go long, especially when we're talking about, again, manufacturing, supply chain, inventory, all those groovy things that I make my heart sing with joy. And I'm so glad Laura was here to help us understand that you don't have to do this alone. And my new favorite tagline, if it needs to be made, we can help. So I want to chat with you. Who's coming up next on the Startup Life Live show? Speaking of products, we're chatting with the amazing Annie Sloan. She is a former HGTV producer and today an avid traveler and a successful Airbnb host. She's the co-founder and CEO of The Host Company, a digital commerce marketplace for short-term rentals. This company's platform enables hosts to create an online store where you can sell anything from mid-stay cleaning to in-home products like snacks and souvenirs, even artwork on the walls. Plus, they can link and sell to services from local vendors and artisans. We are going to learn so much from Annie. Please join the Startup Life Live meetup group to always receive an announcement whenever I post a new show. I'm here Tuesdays and Fridays, 12 p.m. EST. So grateful you carved out time to tune in and up your founder game. I'm an on-wonder of all that you do every single day for your startup. Can't wait to see you next time. Until then, I'm wishing you a delicious day. Mwah, everyone.